Have you seen that the documentary, the 50 Cent
No, I
documentary
haven't seen
for
it.
Diddy?
I haven't seen it.
Oh man, you working
Everybody
hard.
telling me you got to see it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
Part of me don't want to see it.
You probably
John Deal has finally broken his silence, and what he is revealing is utterly shocking. Deal has been withholding information that could completely change the public narrative, and he has now decided to speak out. You may recall the Netflix documentary about Diddy that generated significant buzz. However, the footage Deal had collected was so intense that Netflix refused to air it. They couldn't show any of it. Now, Deal is preparing to release all the crucial information that 50 Cent had to omit from the final cut. This information could fundamentally rewrite everything people thought they knew. You came here for the real, unvarnished story, and that is exactly what Deal is delivering. He is Diddy's former bodyguard, a man who witnessed everything firsthand, and he is now allowing the world to hear what he has been holding back for years. Deal was initially supposed to be a central figure in the Netflix documentary, fully prepared to participate, but events took an unexpected turn. Deal sat down with 50 Cent for a 45-minute meeting to plan how deeply they would delve into the story. However, the director later stepped out of line and disrespected him. Deal refused to cooperate, walked away, and decided to keep his story private until now. He is finally exposing all the situations that were excluded from the final cut. What he is revealing about the City College tragedy and the truth behind Anthony Wolf Jones is described as wild. Furthermore, the truth about what transpired with Kim Porter is reportedly much more serious than anticipated. Even more shocking is the reason certain A-list celebrities allegedly paid to keep themselves out of the documentary. Everything 50 Cent couldn't show is finally coming to light, and the revelations are expected to be intense. Before diving into the leaked details, it's vital to understand the intense and wild chaos that unfolded behind the scenes. 50 Cent and Netflix released a documentary titled Sean Combs: The Reckoning, which immediately shot to the #1 spot. Everyone was streaming it and debating it. But here is the secret. Some of the most important stories were completely missing. John Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, was by Diddy's side for years, observing every detail, the high-profile events, the heated confrontations, the private deals, and the heartbreaking tragedies. Deal saw it all. For years, he has been accumulating footage and evidence, waiting for the day he could finally speak freely. Initially, Deal wanted to be a part of 50 Cent's documentary, believing the project would finally tell the real story without being censored. However, his meeting with the director, Alex Stapleton, quickly deteriorated. Deal felt a negative energy and a lack of respect, and from that moment, everything changed. Deal was ready to commit. He planned a full-package deal with two other men who knew Diddy from the beginning, Tim and Kirk Burrows. These three individuals possessed the kind of shared history that could map out Diddy's entire timeline from his childhood and street era moves to the eventual rise of his business empire. They were ready to deliver the complete story with no missing pieces. Deal requested $50,000 for all three of them combined, a sum he considered more than fair given the evidence, footage, and first-hand knowledge they had preserved for years. The conflict with the director. This is where the situation rapidly became complicated. Alex Stapleton, the director, confronted Deal with a stunning statement. She told him that 50 Cent does not decide what goes into the documentary and does not control who gets paid. She essentially claimed that 50 Cent's name was only being used to generate publicity, but he was not truly in charge of the project. That statement immediately made Gene Deal suspicious and caused him to question the entire setup. Deal felt the director wasn't showing him even basic respect. He provided invoices proving what other documentaries had previously paid him, clear evidence of his value. Despite this, she allegedly called him a liar right to his face. Imagine a man who spent years protecting Diddy, witnessed serious incidents, and gathered evidence at great personal risk, being treated as if he were fabricating his story. A side deal and a walkout. Here is where the situation became even more complicated. While Deal was trying to organize a fair deal for all three men, Kirk Burrows was reportedly making private arrangements on the side. This is often how the industry works. People look out for themselves, even when a solid, collective plan is in place. Deal was trying to keep the process transparent and ensure everyone was compensated appropriately, but Kirk was secretly negotiating his own separate arrangement. Consequently, Deal stepped back and walked away completely. His refusal to participate is precisely why the Netflix documentary feels incomplete and like vital pieces are missing. The one person with the deepest knowledge did not contribute. Now, Deal is finally ready to reveal the major details that were omitted. The real setup of Bad Boy Records. Let's delve into one of the biggest secrets, how Bad Boy Records was truly established, as this detail changes the entire context. Kirk Burroughs, the same man mentioned above, owned 25% of Bad Boy Records from day one, with Diddy holding the remaining 75%. The surprising twist is that the company was not even registered under Diddy's name. It was officially filed under his mother, Janice Combs. Why would Diddy avoid putting the company in his own name and transfer such power to his mother? John Deal claims to know the exact reason. It was a strategic setup designed to dodge legal scrutiny and protect the nascent empire. Diddy allegedly knew serious lawsuits were imminent following the City College tragedy, which we will discuss soon. Since 9 people died at an event he organized, he anticipated legal action from their families. By ensuring the company was not registered in his own name, he employed a cold yet effective legal strategy. The baseball bat incident. The intensity escalates further here. Diddy did not just want protection, he wanted full control. According to Kirk's own testimony in the documentary, Diddy arrived brandishing a baseball bat and pressured Kirk into signing away his 25% stake. Kirk stated the threat was clear and he felt he had no choice. He tried to contest the situation in court in 2003, but the case was dismissed because too much time had elapsed. The sheer audacity is startling. Kirk helped co-found Bad Boy Records, contributed to the vision, and worked alongside Diddy from the beginning. Yet, everything he built was taken from him through intimidation and fear. At one point, Kirk reportedly ended up without stable housing, while Diddy ascended to billionaire status based on the very company they created together. The documentary mentioned this incident but failed to investigate deeply. Deal could have detailed the full blueprint, how the company was placed under Diddy's mother's name to hide assets, avoid lawsuits, and keep certain maneuvers off the public record. The exclusion of this critical information from the final cut is highly suspicious. This is where the entire story takes a dark and profound turn. As Jean Deal claims, the documentary entirely skipped over an entire murder case. This is not just any case. It is the story of Anthony Wolf Jones, a man who was deeply embedded with Bad Boy from the start. Wolf was more than just a security guard. He was present before the record deals, before the industry hype, and before Diddy even envisioned the scope of the empire. Wolf was intensely loyal and knew everything: the business transactions, the internal tensions, the payouts, and the true events at private gatherings. Wolf carried secrets that could destabilize the entire industry. According to Gene Deal, decisions made by Diddy played a direct role in the circumstances that led to Wolf's death. Deal suggests the documentary team failed to cover this story correctly because they either didn't investigate properly, didn't obtain the right intelligence, or deliberately chose not to use the information they had. Wolf was killed by someone allegedly connected to BMF, Black Mafia family, one of the biggest crime organizations tied to hip-hop history. Deal asserts there is a direct link between Wolf's death and Diddy's actions or associations at the time. Yet, the documentary barely mentions Wolf. They showed a couple of photos, labeled him as security, and moved on. The reason is clear. This story touches on real danger, organized crime, deadly conflicts, and people who strictly avoid the spotlight. Netflix likely did not want to enter that territory, and even 50 Cent may have been hesitant to cross that boundary. However, Gene Deal is steadfast, arguing that Wolf's death was not random. It ties into the larger narrative, and understanding it fundamentally changes the perception of everything else. This next revelation is bound to provoke strong reactions. The documentary gave a partial account of the City College tragedy, but Gene Deal claims the actual truth was deliberately omitted, and he would know, as he was personally there that night and witnessed the entire situation unfold. What he reveals completely flips the existing narrative. On the 28th of December 1991, Diddy organized a celebrity basketball event at City College in New York. It was advertised as a charity event, a feel-good occasion with big names expected, including Heavy D, Mike Tyson, and LL Cool J. The building was completely packed, wall to wall. Jean Deal and his security team were hired to manage the external crowd. He had a full professional setup: 18 trained men, working dogs, Rottweilers and pit bulls, gates, and a comprehensive plan to maintain order. Deal understood the behavior of crowds when major celebrities appear in Harlem, so he had a real, robust security plan in place. However, the day before the event.
So yeah, I've been really quiet. I'm gonna go back to being quiet, but I just, before 2025 closes out, you know what I'm saying? I just thought, like, you know, I'm gonna just address some things, you know what I'm saying?
The atmosphere erupted when celebrities like Mike Tyson and LL Cool J entered through the main, most congested entrance instead of using a quieter, planned route. The crowd immediately surged forward with such force that people became trapped and were crushed in the stairwell. But here is the detail the documentary largely ignored. A woman named Jessica Rosenblum was involved in organizing the entrance procedures. Jean Deal asserts that she was the one directing how the door should be managed that night. According to him, her decisions played a huge role in transforming the crowd flow into complete chaos. Deal identifies Jessica Rosenblum as one of the main promoters working alongside Diddy and Heavy D. He claims that when she saw the crowd pushing forward, she panicked. Crucially, Deal alleges that her first priority was not the safety of the people, but the cash box containing all the ticket money. He claims Rosenblum grabbed the money box and locked the door at the bottom of the stairs to protect the cash, effectively trapping the dense crowd of adults inside the stairwell. Because that door was locked, pressure built up instantly. People were crushed, unable to move, and the situation became deadly in a matter of seconds. Deal himself tried to go down the stairs, but the crowd was jammed so tightly he couldn't get through. He was forced to run around the entire gym, enter through a different access point, and begin opening doors from the inside. By the time he reached the scene, the catastrophic damage had already occurred. Deal recounts trying to help multiple injured adults, providing CPR, but tragically, some did not survive. He recalls a man standing there, heartbroken and crying, saying, "This was supposed to be our night out. How am I even supposed to explain this?" The entire moment shook Deal to his core. Jean Deal witnessed every second of this chaos. He says he knows exactly who locked that door and how the situation spiraled out of control, yet Jessica Rosenblum was never truly held accountable. Her name appeared in old news reports, but there were no charges, no consequences. The documentary discussed the City College tragedy, but only focused on Diddy and Heavy D. They never mentioned Jessica, never explained why Deal's entire security team was abruptly dismissed, and never revealed that a locked door intended to protect a box of cash turned a packed stairwell into a deadly trap. This was a major piece of the story, and it was completely omitted. Deal tried to tell this entire detailed story for the documentary, but none of it made the final cut. You must stop and consider why this happened, as the behind-the-scenes drama surrounding the documentary was just as intense as the stories Deal was ready to expose. Deal had established a comprehensive package deal with Tim and Kirk Burrows, three men who possessed distinct knowledge of Diddy's world. Tim Burrows knew Diddy's early life and background. Kirk Burrows had deep knowledge of the business structure and contracts, for example, bad boy ownership. Jean Deal carried the street-level truth, the sensitive security incidents, and situations no one else would touch. Together, they could have delivered the most complete and unfiltered version of Diddy's story ever filmed. However, Alex Stapleton, the director, began to change her stance. She told Deal the $50,000 amount he requested was crazy money, despite him presenting actual invoices proving he had been paid similar rates by other productions. She had the receipts but ignored their validity. Then came the comment that completely shattered the trust. She told him 50 Cent doesn't decide what goes in the documentary, and he doesn't decide who gets paid. She effectively laid out the reality. 50 Cent's name was being used purely for marketing, but he lacked any actual creative control over the content. Think about that for a second. The entire project was promoted as 50 Cent's documentary about Diddy, leveraging their long-standing feud to generate hype. Yet, behind the scenes, he lacked the power to choose which crucial stories made it into the film. This means the public was sold one version of the show while the real editorial decisions were being made elsewhere. Deal recognized this dissonance and realized he was not dealing with the honest project he had signed up for, and that is why he walked away. It is striking how this unfolded. Deal felt completely disrespected, a feeling anyone in his position would share. He has been telling these stories for years on his own platform, backed by real evidence footage, photos, documents, yet the director acted as though his voice was insignificant. Meanwhile, as mentioned earlier, Kirk Burrows was also making clandestine, sideways moves behind the scenes. Kirk Burrows continued to call Jean Deal, trying to persuade him to accept a lower fee, claiming he was acting in the team's best interest. However, Deal later discovered that Kirk was secretly negotiating a private arrangement for himself with the production company. This confirmed Deal's suspicions about the self-serving nature of the industry. Seeing this breach of trust, Deal officially terminated the discussion and walked away. This decision is precisely why the documentary feels profoundly incomplete today. So many crucial narratives were never included because the person who was most intimately involved in these events refused to participate after being disrespected and treated as though his contribution had no value. The individual with the deepest, most sensitive knowledge stepped out, and the final cut clearly reflects that absence. A major point of frustration for viewers is how minimally the documentary touched upon Kim Porter. She was Diddy's former partner and the mother of his children, who passed away suddenly in 2018 at the age of 47. The official cause was listed as pneumonia, but many questions remain regarding the circumstances of her death. Kim Porter was around Diddy for years. She understood the intricacies of the business, the private events, the tensions, and the general atmosphere of those exclusive circles. She witnessed things up close, and yet her passing received little explanation beyond the official statement. The documentary barely addressed her. There was no real analysis, no deeper investigation, nothing of substance. Multiple sources suggest the production team intentionally avoided the Kim Porter story. It may have been deemed too sensitive, complicated, or controversial to cover on camera. Jean Deal, who actually knew and looked out for Kim at times, says he has information about what happened behind the scenes and believes that part of the story must also be told. However, none of his knowledge made it into the documentary. They simply flashed a couple of photos, mentioned she was the mother of Diddy's children, and quickly moved on. For someone who played such a major role in Diddy's life, that brief segment felt suspiciously inadequate, suggesting a clear reason for avoiding her story. The narrative becomes increasingly suspicious when considering Diddy's famous social circle. For decades, Diddy hosted massive, high-profile parties filled with top-tier celebrities, including actors, musicians, athletes, and even politically powerful figures. Everyone attended these events because Diddy's network was immense. Why, then, did the documentary fail to include any stories about the famous guests who were constantly around him? Why were there no revelations about who partied with him for years, or what transpired in those private rooms and invite-only sections? It does not logically follow that Diddy hosted countless exclusive and wild parties without a single major celebrity being pulled into the controversial mix. According to Jean Deal, he believes certain A-list celebrities did not want their reputations associated with the allegations in the documentary. Consequently, they allegedly reached out and paid to ensure they were excluded from the final project. This theory is plausible, as these individuals have careers, brands, endorsements, and families to protect.
When he started screaming on Chef Jordan, why if he worrying about my situation? Now he's up in her face. That he ended up pushing her, and he pushed her out the door. You know what I'm saying? She fell on her ass and all that other shit.
Jean Deal claims that 50 Cent's decision to take money was purely because he is, first and foremost, a businessman. His intent was not to destroy other people's careers. Instead, he was focused on bringing Diddy's behavior to light, intentionally avoiding dragging unrelated celebrities into the controversy. If this is true, it suggests that the documentary released is far from the full, unedited story. Jean sees the final version as polished and controlled, designed to keep powerful names safe while focusing all the weight of the allegations onto Diddy. He believes the documentary is missing crucial stories that would have truly destabilized the entire industry. Speaking of celebrities remaining quiet, Marlon Wayans' reaction when asked if he had watched the documentary instantly sparked public discussion. Marlon stated that he has not seen it and likely never will. He then made a cryptic but powerful statement, calling the documentary a narrative. He explained, "When people put certain clips together, they can shape any story they want." He then added the striking remark, "Everybody's being programmed." This comment raises significant questions. Was Marlon defending Diddy? Was he implying that the documentary might be biased or manipulative? Or was he simply trying to distance himself to prevent his own name from being drawn into anything controversial? Rumors have circulated in entertainment circles for years about connections between Marlon and Diddy that the public never heard about, though nothing has ever been confirmed. When Marlon refuses to watch the documentary and speaks about narratives and programming, it naturally makes people question what information he might be privy to. His reaction seemed far from casual. It suggested a person who has observed things closely and does not want to become involved on camera. This only deepens the mystery surrounding the entire situation. Jean Deal confirms he is aware of information involving Marlon and many other major celebrities, but they all consciously chose to stay away from the documentary, unwilling to have their stories told or be caught in the crossfire. Now, turning to one of the most explosive elements of the situation, the private, behind-the-scenes footage of Diddy before his arrest. This footage prompted one major question. How did 50 Cent manage to obtain it? The documentary shows Diddy in a New York hotel room having private, confidential conversations with his lawyer on speakerphone, discussing his strategy, his reactions to the media, and his next moves. This was intensely personal, behind-closed-doors content. Diddy had hired a videographer during that period, perhaps intending to create his own documentary or a personal archive. In any case, he was being filmed closely. The key issue is that all that footage legally belonged to Diddy, secured by NDAs, contracts, and legal agreements. So, how did this footage, shot under Diddy's control and confidentiality, end up in a project produced by one of his biggest public rivals? Diddy's legal team reacted swiftly. The moment the private footage appeared on Netflix, they sent a cease and desist letter, calling it stolen footage that was never approved for public release. They even demanded that Netflix remove the entire documentary, highlighting the seriousness of the breach. Netflix responded by saying they obtained the footage legally, but they refused to disclose how they acquired it. 50 Cent has also maintained complete silence on the source of the footage. Even the videographer from that time has not commented publicly. Gene Deal believes the story behind that leak is far more significant than anyone is currently admitting. The question remains, what truly happened with the private footage? One prominent theory suggests the videographer sold the content because Diddy allegedly failed to pay him. Gene Deal claims Diddy had a history of delaying payments, potentially prompting the videographer to seek retribution. Other theories speculate that someone may have secretly slipped the footage to 50 Cent for a high price, or that the chain of custody became messy, allowing the footage to change hands without legal risk being fully assessed. While the footage's actual legality is unknown, the entire situation is perceived as questionable, leading viewers to wonder what other chaotic, behind-the-scenes material may have contributed to the documentary. Gene Deal also shared a personal anecdote illustrating the high tension surrounding Diddy. After Gene stopped working for him, Misa Hilton, who has a long history with Diddy, reached out to Gene for protection. She wanted to feel safe while enjoying her life, without provoking a confrontation with Diddy. Trusting Gene's knowledge of the scene and his fearlessness, she hired him. Gene charged her $2,250 for a few hours of security and assured her that if Diddy saw her with him, there would be no incident, as Diddy knew exactly who Gene was and that he would not back down. This story contrasts sharply with an incident described in the documentary by rapper and producer Eric Sermon. Eric claimed he was in a car with Misa when Diddy aggressively confronted her on the street, allegedly swinging at Misa while Eric watched from the car. Eric stated that Diddy even challenged him to a fight, but Eric chose to leave the scene to calm down and listen to music. Gene Deal expressed disbelief at Eric's account, stating that if someone in his car were confronted in such a way, he would have intervened regardless of who the aggressor was. Gene asserts that he always stood by his principles, and protecting people was integral to his character. According to Gene, Diddy had a long history of aggressive behavior toward women, and this was widely known among industry insiders for years. It was not a hidden secret, but something people deliberately avoided discussing because of Diddy's power, influence, and vast financial resources. People stayed quiet to prevent complications. The documentary's inclusion of the hallway video involving Cassie caused a global reaction. However, Gene claims this behavior was not new. This energy had been present for decades, and the only reason the public finally witnessed it was because that single video leaked. When asked for his final opinion, Gene Deal, who watched the documentary carefully and took detailed notes, did not hold back. He stated that most of the documentary was old news for anyone close to the industry. The wild parties, the control, the pressure, and the messy situations did not surprise those familiar with how things worked. Gene believes the only truly new and interesting content was the private, behind-the-scenes footage of Diddy before his arrest. Seeing Diddy speak with his lawyers, stressed about the media, and attempting to strategize felt genuine, like watching him scramble. He says that while that specific footage had value, the rest of the documentary felt repackaged for a mainstream audience and was not deep or shocking enough to warrant a second viewing. Gene believes he could have elevated the documentary with greater depth, historical context, and actual evidence, but the production team likely sought something safe. Their goal, he claims, was to stream successfully on Netflix without putting any other powerful names in uncomfortable positions. Gene concludes that the documentary is incomplete because it portrays Diddy as the sole villain implying he was a lone monster. Gene insists this is inaccurate. He claims many people were aware of what was happening and stayed silent, and many others were involved but never faced consequences. Because those names and their secrets were protected, Gene considers the documentary a failure to tell the whole story. He points out that he has been sharing these unfiltered accounts on podcasts and his own platforms for years, long before Netflix or 50 Cent became involved.